Arthur Abraham, who is at the top of the list right now, and the favorite, and along with Andre Ward as a co-favorite, really, at this point in the second stage. And Abraham is fighting the guy from Michigan.
The slickest guy, Andre Dirrell.
He is the slickest in town, or at least in this tournament, and he unfortunately didn't win that fight, and
should have won that fight against Froch.
He should have, could have. It was one of those things. Like I think Froch didn't win the fight. I think that
Dirrell
lost it, and I think forget about the scoring. I mean, it is what it is, and I think that's a good thing about Dirrell, is that he's putting that behind him.
Yeah.
And he's saying, hey, I want to learn from this and become better. But I don't know. Arthur Abraham,
solid guy.
Solid guy. Just incredible. He's on the pound for pound. I mean, the guy is. Was one of those guys who a lot of people, up until this exposure to the Super 6, had seen him and heard about him, and but had said, hey, he's just a kind of protected guy. He fights Germany, and who's he fought? Most notably the Pantera, and
Taylor.
And then Taylor, and again he looked really impressive, and you can kind of go back and say, well, anybody could have beaten Taylor, but
yeah, well, Dirrell, I think, is a real good guy, a lot of stamina, young guy. We met him. He's pretty tall. I thought he was taller in person than when he's on.
He's definitely got the size and the reach on Abraham.
I think he comes out maybe a little more aggressive. He's quick, good defense. I think Abraham's a slow starter. I think Dirrell could get a lot of confidence, probably blow through him in the first 3 to 4 rounds. Abraham's gonna build up some steam. He's more of a counter puncher and he's quick. Obviously, he's got his power, but if Dirrell can get the 7 rounds in the bag going into the 11th round, I don't know if Abraham's going to be able to catch him. So I'm pulling for Dirrell. I know he's not favored to win, but I think if he has a good game plan, he sticks to it. He's a smart guy. I don't know if Abraham's going to be able to catch him, because Dirrell doesn't really leave himself open after he throws punches. Taylor, is kind of leaning in. He throws the combinations, but he leans in. So he's right there for a quick counter, and Abraham's got a quick counter. But I think Dirrell is smart enough and still not as wore out as Taylor was to not be there when Abraham throws his stuff. I don't think he's going to hurt Abraham, but I think he's going to do just enough to win that round. Just enough to win that one.
Right.
And after you have 7, assuming you don't get hurt or knocked down, you win the fight.
Hey, Taylor was, about 15 seconds away from going the distance with Abraham.
Right.
Got a knockout and being a pretty good fight, and close fight, competitive fight. And so this fight, with a guy who's, like you said, maybe has more stamina, younger, fresher feet, and hasn't had that same knockout recent history. I don't see why he couldn't go the distance. Now, he does have that hands down and that backwards movement, and kind of leaving, not stepping out or stepping to the side, but actually kind of just dropping and doing this. And I think that that's not a good thing. I mean, I wish he had maybe the same way I kind of wish Paul Williams had at this point in his career, maybe someone who could take him to the next level as far as a trainer. But again, he's. I think what you said is exactly right. He's gonna win those first few rounds.
Yeah.
And I think what's interesting is going to be the rounds, like let's say
5
through 8, where you're going to see a turning point of, does Dirrell continue to convincingly win and use that style of his quickness and his elusiveness and his pot shotting and the way he fights against Abraham, who starts slow, or is Abraham going to start to solve that puzzle that really Froch didn't solve?
Well, you know what? Froch is so much more aggressive than Abraham, and he still couldn't catch him.
That's exactly.
So he was doing it from round 1, like you were saying.
That's exactly my point. Abraham is not a guy that is going to pursue like Froch and you know, and again, that Froch Dirrell fight was a real close fight. And
well, who do you think won that fight? I've watched it several times, and I had Dirrell win it every time.
I have it
every
on
time.
point. I have it on point. I mean, here's the thing. I have seen the fight, and we did the taping of our show right after that fight, and I said, you know what, it's a draw, you know, and I said, you know, that's kind of the way I felt. But then I've since watched it like about 3 times, okay? And one time I actually even, like, you know, did this kind of bullshit, and I really think that Dirrell won the fight on points.
Yeah.
And you know, it was one of those things where, you know, again, you're not going to cry about it. You're not going to say this or that or coulda, shoulda, woulda. You know, it is what it is. It's a tournament, and that's why he's not out of it. And that's why it's. I think if you can take this and do it, I just think if you were fighting a guy like, you know, Alan Green, who is the new replacement for Taylor, or someone other than Abraham, obviously he'd, you know, be better able to bounce back. I mean, this is going to be the toughest. He's got the toughest, really.
Yeah,
track as far as this tournament and how it begins. And you know, again, he barely lost that fight. You know, he lost it, and he's bouncing back. And I think that he's got a good style against Abraham. I see, you know, really those pivotal kind of after he wins the first 4 or 5 rounds, and that maybe 6 through 8 or 9. I see him still, you know, being able to use that reach and use that speed effectively against Abraham, and Abraham still be losing rounds and not really be able to lose, and then, you know, and again, you know, having that move more forward in his direction for the later rounds and winning a decision.
So you're going Dirrell decision?
I'm going with Dirrell.
Same here. So, you know, it's all on how the judges see it. You get a guy that really doesn't have any activity in the first couple of rounds, like Abraham, against a slick boxer like Dirrell, so it looks like it's not even close, you know. But then Abraham does more than he did in the first few rounds, but still not enough to win the round. But some of the judges, I think, just say, you know, he's coming on. He did like 3 times what he did in the first 2 rounds. He won that round, but in my eyes, he still didn't win because Dirrell's still doing more. You know, so it's almost like if you see a guy doing, you know, 3 times what he's doing in the first 2 rounds, they tend to give it to him. Like Froch. Froch didn't do anything, but now he's more aggressive, more desperate, trying to knock him out. They give him a round, even though he didn't land anything, he didn't score any points. Dirrell was, you know, great defense, dodged the punches, landed the jabs. But the fact that Froch did so much more than he did the previous round, he was getting rounds, you know, and it just, hopefully there's not the bad judging here. And that one's in Rancho Mirage.
Or yeah, not even.
It's just North's hometown,
right?
You know, which is not in England when you're fighting Froch. You're not going to get those close rounds, you know. So I think it's a good location for Dirrell to win close round fights.
Right. And you know, and again, you wish, you know, we didn't really have to talk about where the location is and how that would have any impact. Again, I think it's just more of that style and really that reach, because Abraham is the smallest guy in the tournament.
Dirrell's probably the lightest.
Well, I'm talking.
Dirrell's the lightest.
I'm talking
shortest,
about,
maybe. Abraham.
I'm talking about like dimensions, like your height, your reach. You know, those things. I mean, Abraham and Dirrell are like the North and the South Pole as perspective.
Short, stocky, with power.
Everybody else is in between, and I'm not just talking about. I'm just talking about that size. And you know, I think that the key is going to be Dirrell using that reach. I think he uses his feet, you know, more than his reach. And again, that's where I kind of wish that he had more of a trainer, a better trainer. No disrespect to his trainer, but that would be able to, you know, exploit that reach more than he uses his feet to his advantage. But I think, but both of them are, I think, going to come together for him, and I see him winning that split decision or even unanimous decision as a real huge upset in boxing to begin the year, and again maybe propels him to be the dark horse or continue to be the dark horse in the tournament.
Well, it's just like Ward. He was, you know, Kessler was supposed to be the favorite. He got blown out by Ward. You know, it's not that Ward was, you know, that was the fight of his career. He was always that good, and maybe Kessler was overrated. Same with Abraham. You know, he's great. He looked great against Taylor and everyone else he's fought. You know, he's a good counterpuncher. But if you get a guy in there that's quick with stamina and a reach, like you said, you know, I think he's going to have problems.